Dr. Brian Cruz is the CMO at Midwest Express, overseeing clinical operations across 50-plus urgent care locations. With more than 2 decades in emergency and urgent care medicine, he has held multiple leadership roles and is truly a pioneer in this space. Dr. Cruz earned his MD from the University of Colorado School of Medicine, an MBA and MSF from Northeastern University, and is board certified in emergency medicine by the American Board of Emergency Medicine. Welcome to DX, the podcast, Brian.
Thank you.
So as an enterprise organization with over 50 rooftops, talk to me about your point of view of coordinating, developing, and reinforcing care standards across your various locations.
So when you talk about that many sites over a period of, you really have to figure out some standardization across. And how do you implement that? Because when you have each one is kind of working on their own, you really kind of develop a kind of overall plan for what that looks like. So one of the things you really have to do is standardize some of the training. So it's training for the MAs, training for the providers, making sure that it's exactly the same. You have to designate some providers and trainers on each level to make sure that they're delivering the same kind of experience, which can be challenging. You really have to designate those people who are good at it, passionate, engaged, and then they can kind of set the tone for the rest and develop other trainers underneath them so that you can kind of propagate that whole process down. Because when you're talking that many providers, that many MAs, it's a lot of work to do. And then having some type of quality assurance standardization on the back end. How well is the training, some way to kind of gauge how they're delivering the care. Is the care appropriate, and using some kind of metrics to define that.
Yeah, I love that because you really need to make sure that the emphasis is on the front work, right? To make sure that a structure is in place, that you have a really solid foundation, because there's always going to be those outliers, right? And do you have any kind of situations where you've had to kind of deal with said outliers, or what are some ways that you can kind of step in and help to further guide the process? Or obviously the standard work isn't always going to work perfectly every time. So tell me a little bit about that.
So it's a matter of identifying it, figure out, is there someone kind of not meeting, your standard, and identify what they're not meeting, and then having some conversations, really speaking to them on a micro level, hey, was it the training? Is it that you don't understand, what our processes or our policies are? And really designating and delegating people to kind of have those conversations. From my level as a CMO, it's part of my responsibility to do that, but also I can delegate some of that responsibility as well. But it helps with engagement so that they know we do care. It's not a matter hey, you're on your own. I'm here to support you. Maybe it wasn't, the training, you missed something on there, but I'm here to help. So let's kind of collaborate and let's get this, up to where we want it.
Yeah. One of the things we've talked about in the past is some of your work on reinforcement of finding those outliers, and then how do you proceed with reinforcing kind of the next steps, and that approach to that kind of peer-to-peer evaluation, and then peer-to-peer kind of teaching and education and next steps. So tell me a little bit more about that and what you all have kind of leaned into in terms of those steps.
So one of those things, we were really challenged with doing quality assurance checks and chart audits. And, we had to do a lot of them, and we designated them initially to do just the physicians to do them. They weren't meeting the metric, and they were only seeing a couple hundred a month, and, we're seeing a lot of patients. So we really kind of took it away from their hands and really designated to the leaders, the providers in each one of the sites, and made them kind of the team lead within there, and really designated them to do these chart audits. And then on top of that, a process, they get to learn from their other providers,
right?
But also them teaching them how to give positive feedback, hey, I noticed this, which is different than the others. So it's having them give some positive feedback to their peers as well. So each one is learning from each other when they do these chart audits, and then they get sustained in a folder, and the doctors will then review and then sign off. So they're getting feedback from 2 different arenas.
Yeah. And what's really impactful about that is this is the team of people that they are interacting with day to day, they're working with day to day. So not only is it meeting the goal of reinforcing kind of, here's where we need to make some improvements, it's helping them grow clinically. And then it's really building that teamwork, right? So it's multifaceted in terms of how you're able to do all of that. And especially as we think about, be it younger physicians or those that have just recently graduated from their training program, or our support, that we're seeing across multiple clinics in terms of nurse practitioners and PAs, there's always an opportunity for all of us to learn.
Yes.
And I'm sure it offers some opportunity for some feedback loop for those leaders as well. Like, how are they doing in terms of connecting? How are they doing in terms of teaching? So I think just that full circle is really such a great approach in terms of just what those clinics need and what they need to help kind of build those teams.
Definitely is. I mean, you have to have that feedback loop as far as the leaders got to understand. Are you projecting it? Are you communicating the right way? Are the objectives clear? Because sometimes they may not be clear. And so it's an opportunity to kind of reassess. Did I say it clear enough that they're following what I did?
Yeah.
Or it's something I need to adjust as a leader, or is it
to
something
learn from?
And so I think it's that team approach, and a lot of the providers will be more engaged when I'm trying to say, like, I want to be better as well. So I'm in the same boat with you.
Exactly. Coming to the table and saying, this is the level playing field. We're both in this together.
Yes.
Love that. I know specifically at Midwest, you've done some critical KPI measurements for ED transfers. Really interesting metric to watch because we can look at these ED transfers and it has a lot to say about the clinical decision making that's happening. It also has a lot to say maybe for patient experience and then overall just kind of the operational decisions of the clinic. So let's dive into that a little bit of how you've kind of utilized that metric to think about upskilling, training, feedback loops, et cetera, and just learn more from you.
So one of the things, I mean, you can look at the metric itself, like what's the percentage of how many of your patients are being transferred to the ED. But it goes a little bit deeper as far as, is there appropriateness to that? Because some ER transfers are very appropriate and they need to go. And we don't have the ability to treat them in urgent care. But really those ones that you designate as inappropriate, you kind of get a feel, take a chart audit, look at them. Are there opportunities for education? Is it that looking at some of those charts and maybe, hey, this is a newer provider, really they're sending chest pains that are like a 20-year-old chest pain for, the ED. When they're concerned and they don't understand, like, you don't need to send them. There's certain criteria you could utilize to that. And so it's a good teaching moment. From that, you can develop a whole educational program, which we did, like from a lot of these, like we developed a chest pain and hypertension teaching, a dizziness. When we started seeing all these that going through, we kind of implemented a educational component around them with provider meetings and slide decks and really reinforcement like, hey, this is what the literature says. This is what supports your decision making. And we can really build the confidence because giving them that literature to say, oh, yeah, I don't need to send them. And so therefore, we can kind of keep some of these in-house and treat them very appropriately.
Yeah. So using the actual example, they lived that moment with that patient. They experienced what they experienced and now teaching into that. And really thinking about how that emphasizes for their future patients they're going to see what they will do differently next and how they will proceed differently. And really just getting that education from the perspective of, experiential learning is so important. And so they've already experienced it with this patient. Now let's actually deep dive into what we could have done differently. And you just know that those learning pathways and tracks in the brain are just forming so much deeper at that point.
It's really trying to give them the experience for that because you really can't develop the confidence and without doing the reps or seeing the patients. So it's really kind of reinforcing the things they should look for subsequent patients, making a decision on who does and who does not based on that information. And so it's really trying to accelerate their confidence with each one of those chief complaints.
That's great. So have you seen kind of a rising up of people interested in more education and leaning into this approach that you've taken as far as more people that want to be engaged? Is it invigorating the clinical, team members, the nurse practitioners, the PAs, the physicians? Tell me a little bit about that, maybe excitement or energy you've seen with all of this.
It is. And I think you even get feedback on the back end, like, oh, this is so great. So, for example, we saw challenges with a lot of referrals to orthopedics, not really understanding how to splint or what's the appropriate splint. So we devised a course. And so we have like a 2-hour course that goes on like every other month. And, I teach it, pop up some great x-rays of subtle things, what they should be looking for, why they should be looking for it, and then do like an in-service of splinting.
Great, yeah.
And subsequently on the back end of this, how many people have reached out and says, oh, I just had my first finger dislocation that I reduced. Like, it was great. Like,
Yes,
I just said
that
exactly what you
accomplishment.
had taught us. Or like, hey, I was feeling uncomfortable how to splint this, but I did a full R splint. It looks great. And so you get that reinforcement that really it's making a change, and they're excited about learning about it.
That's great. Really meeting people where they are and then helping them grow and just really thrive in the work that they're doing. So, well, in closing, wondering if you could leave us with one little nugget of what you think is maybe a prediction you have for urgent care as we are in 2025 and maybe a couple of years to come. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think that, urgent care has solidified its place in the healthcare field. I think a lot more patients turn to us. I think that's only going to be going forward the same thing. The frustration of waiting in the emergency department is, patients don't want to go. Even when they do have to go, they say, oh, really, it's going to be a long wait. And then the challenge of getting in with PCPs. So I think that, our space has really kind of carved out, their place in the healthcare field, and it's only going to get bigger. I think that we have other opportunities that we can kind of help our patients who are having challenges of seeing PCPs or other needs, that urgent care can definitely fill those voids.
Yeah, and in the midst of all of that, continuing to elevate the level of quality of the care we're giving at every turn, which is what you're doing fantastically.
Yes.
So thanks for all the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Really appreciate you having some time to spend with us today on DX the podcast, and love to see you back again soon.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
Thanks. DX the podcast was born out of the idea that we are ready to diagnose the future of urgent care with the smartest leaders in the industry. Find all the other episodes on Spotify and LinkedIn to keep up with us in this journey.